Well, good evening on this day. 1,203 of the Trump administration, 181 days to go until our next presidential election. The president has adopted the use of a Scorsesean phrase to sum up our sorry circumstances as a country these days. Yesterday, he said about the state of the U.S. economy and unemployment, it is what it is. Today, when asked about the death toll, he again said, it is what it is, adding 70,000 sounds correct to him. Just yesterday, the president announced he was winding down the coronavirus task force, even though the pandemic is just now ramping up in some places, with the largest spike in new cases now in Nebraska and Minnesota. The president seemed fine with winding it down. Mike Pence, who runs the task force, of course, seemed fine with doing away with the task force, until today, when the president said he didn't know how popular the task force was and said he's decided he's going to keep it around. The virus continues to churn across our country in tandem with the trend of reopening businesses in entire states, despite the Johns Hopkins expert who just today testified that none of the states reopening have met all of the White House guidelines for reopening. And despite opinion polls showing a majority of Americans are not at all ready or willing to go back to life and events as normal as we knew them. Indeed, in the real world tonight, the death toll across our country stands at 73,863 souls lost to this virus. There are now, among the small percentage tested, more than 1.2 million confirmed cases. The number of new cases is rising in nearly half of our country. Those are the states in orange on this map. The green states are where the number of cases are falling. Some 36 states have now reopened in some form or fashion. Former director of the CDC was asked about that during a House committee hearing this morning.
There will be, tragically, at least 100,000 deaths from COVID by the end of this month. As bad as this has been, it's just the beginning.
Is it irresponsible to open the economy without adequate testing?
We need to continue to rapidly ramp up our ability to do all of the four things I mentioned, not just test, but also isolate people who are infected, contact trace, and quarantine. By having all of those things in place, we can come out safer and sooner and restart our economy without a risk of explosive spread.
Dr. Fauci was supposed to testify at that hearing as well, but he was blocked by the White House. New reporting from Politico reveals that even as the president has pushed to reopen this country, federal officials are worried. Politico obtained audio recordings of 3 conference call meetings held between 24 April and 1st of May, led by HHS and FEMA officials. They talked about medical supplies and a possible new outbreak as restrictions are lifted. Politico says a May 1st conference call started with the head of the CDC's influenza division warning, quote, the numbers of deaths definitely will be high. Well, this afternoon, Trump was asked about the risk.
Will the nation just have to accept the idea that by reopening, there will be more cases, there will be more deaths?
So I call these people warriors, and I'm actually calling now, as you know, John, the nation warriors. Hopefully that won't be the case, John, but it could very well be the case. We can't have our whole country out. Can't do it. The country won't take it. It won't stand it. It's not sustainable. If somebody lost somebody, a parent or a wife or a husband or, you know, any brothers, sisters, if you lost someone, you can never make up for that by saying, wow, you're going to have a great year next year economically. And so you can never do that. But I will say that from an economic standpoint, I think next year is going to be a very big year.
Trump made those comments during an Oval Office event to honor nurses, where he was also asked about the need for testing.
We have more cases because we do more testing. If I don't do testing, we don't have any cases. So as I do more testing, they say, but you have more cases.
Meanwhile, the White House task force that we were told yesterday is going away, as we mentioned, came roaring back into existence today.
I thought we could wind it down sooner, but I had no idea how popular the task force is until actually yesterday. When I started talking about winding it down, I'd get calls from very respected people. saying, I think it would be better to keep it going. It's done such a good job. I would say by Monday, we'll be announcing 2 or 3 new members to the task force.
Those new task force members may be challenged on the darkest aspect of this pandemic, and that is the growing death toll. Axios reporting the president has complained to advisors about the way the coronavirus death toll is being calculated, suggesting the real numbers are actually lower and that a number of his senior aides share this view. One high-level official, quote, expects the president to begin publicly questioning the death toll as it closes in on his predictions for the final death count and damages him politically. Trump was also asked about that report this afternoon.
Well, I think what it is what it is. From you saying it's 70,000, it's approximately now 70,000. I don't imagine there'd be a very big variation. No, it's a big number, but it's also a number that's at the lower scale. I think, Deborah, you could say it's at the very lower scale of any number that was predicted. Because if you look at the predictions, I guess they said from 100 to 220,000. That's if we did the big shut-ins and if we went to the total shutdown.
Tonight, the nation's most populous state preparing to reopen. On Friday, California will start lifting parts of its stay-at-home order, which has been in effect for nearly 2 months. This is happening even as the state grapples with rising numbers of cases in L.A. and the Bay Area. California reported more than 2,600 new confirmed cases of the virus yesterday.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.